Prophet Marshall Occurrence. So this video is going to be about two dynasties. We're breaking everything down to generations. We're breaking everything down to generations in these final hours. And you might ask, well, it's almost the end of the world. Why talk about this now? Because how I feel is you deserve the explanation for all of this. America was a big experiment. That's all it was. That's how I put it. America was a big, huge experimental community, and it never stopped being an experimental community. So I think you deserve explanation. I think you deserve explanation before it's all over. In other words, I think you deserve closure. Better to say, you deserve proper closure for all that has been going on in America. And this is proper closure, even not just at the hands of white people, white Americans or Americans. You need closure concerning African Americans. Why we went the way we went, why things didn't go, why things went awry. You know what I mean? You know what term I'm trying to use. Why things went rogue. Why things went rogue. There's another term for you. Why did things go so rogue in the African American community? Because if you think we on track, you tripping. All this killing, all these kids getting killed, all this stuff going on. So we gotta show you the original blueprint, which was the Malcolm X generation and the MLK generation. That's the original. If you don't know, that's on track for black people. Let's ponder that. Let's ponder that. On track for black people is the worldviews of Malcolm X, the worldviews of MLK. That's on track. Can we establish that? We are not on track. And, you know, people will say do better, can do better, we do better. That means we ain't on track. That's an understatement. Do better. That's all the celebrities say is do better, okay? So what I'm going to show you as a prophet is that there's two dynasties, just like you have in the Chinese and China, you have dynasties, right? The dynasty over here, the dynasty over there. In China, you had different dynasties. And in the African American community, in the black community, we had two dynasties. So I'm going to be explaining these two dynasties. I took a break from talking about the Babyboomer generation. I'm gonna review on that right quick. So the Babyboomers generation is the generation that destroyed the African American community, the black community. We covered in another video, you can go back and look at that video, where the Babyboomers generation, the people born between 1946 and 1964, were responsible for most of the drugs being sold when crack cocaine came out, and they were responsible for starting the gangs, the Crips, and the Bloods. It was the Babyboomers generation, and I'm not pointing fingers without dates. The people that was born that started the Crips, that started the Bloods, were Babyboomers by dates. Sylvester Scott was born in 1955. So he was one of the leaders of the Bloods, Sylvester Scott. Vincent Owens went to school with him, so they both were Babyboomers. With the Crips, you had Raymond Washington. He was born in 1953. And you had Stanley Tookie Williams. He was born in 1953 as well. Stanley Tookie Williams III was born in 1953. So the Crips and the Bloods were all Babyboomers. Okay? And that's what started all this killing. Really was the gang banging and the crack selling, and like we covered, this is important information when we talk about dynasties, because you're going to understand what the baby boomers dynasty was all about. Not what we want to be about, what we was all about in actuality. In actuality, the baby boomers generation was all about gang banging, selling crack, killing, doing crimes, right? It wasn't Generation X, which was born between the dates of 1965 and 1984. So when you look at dates, I'm gonna give you some homework. Anything you want to find out what happened and how it happened, like for example, the crack epidemic. When you look at the crack epidemic, crack came out in America in 1981, the year I was born. Okay, look at, by dates, looking at the dates of generations, remind you, the baby boomers were born 1946 to 1964. So the youngest in 1984, 20 years later, when crack came out, 3 years after crack came out, the youngest was 20 years old of the baby boomers generation. Okay. The oldest was 35. When crack came out, the oldest was 35 years old. The oldest baby boomers was 35. Because they were born, the oldest were born in 1946. 30 years later will be 1976. And you add 5 more years, that's 35. So, you know, the oldest baby boomers were 35 when crack came out, and the youngest was 17. Mm-hmm. The youngest was 17. So when crack came out in 81, the baby boomers were between the ages of 35 and 17. I want you to think about this. When crack came out, the baby boomers generation, if you don't understand, maybe you don't acknowledge generations. Every civilized humanity has to have generations to differentiate the people with, if not for any other reasons, for the things they will experience in the time, in the culture, and the changes in the time. You can't just have a whole bunch of people and they're not distinguished by times and changes of times and changes in cultures and things they experience in a certain community, because different generations are going to experience different things, right? So you have to have differentiation in, if not for any other reason, differentiation among a people by generation to signify the changes in time and the history of those people and the things they done. Each generation do different things, and they do, and have different histories. Let me say that again. Every generation has different history. So we don't have the same history as the baby boomers as Generation X. I come from Generation X. I can't share the same history as the baby boomers and the silent generation. It's almost like you're a different people within a people. Make sense? So it's like you're a different people within a people. You can't have a whole bunch of people and you try to understand things and you try to break things down. And what'll happen if you do that, if you don't do that, is you'll have liabilities given to every generation, and every generation don't deserve the same liabilities. Perfect example. Like I said, the baby boomers are the ones that started selling crack, cocaine, selling drugs, gang banging, right? We don't, as Generation X, we don't deserve that liability. As the millennials, we don't deserve the foundational liability for that. because we didn't start Crips and Bloods. We didn't start selling crack cocaine first. It was the baby boomers and the youngest part of the silent generation. So you see how this is all important to get closure with all that has happened. You need closure. The masters, let me put it like this. The masters demand closure. The masters demand closure. If you're a master, you sitting around and you know it's the end of the world, you should start demanding closure. You should start reviewing all the stuff that happened. And that's what I'm doing. At this point, I ain't just waiting for the end, anticipating the end. I already know it's coming. I'm going to now review what happened. That's what the intellectuals are going to do. Listen to what I'm saying to you. You should be getting closure as a master. When you've had great efforts, you had good efforts, and things didn't go as it's supposed to go, or you're just an intellectual person. Maybe you didn't have the best efforts, but you're an intellectual person, and you want to know what went wrong. I'm basically breaking down what went wrong and who the liabilities belong to by generation, instead of just saying it's black people, because it wasn't all black people. It wasn't all of us. And so it was certain generations. You see how it's important, right? Okay, so I'm breaking down each generation so that we can place the liabilities where they belong. Right? Okay, so the most important, this is what we're going to figure out right here. The most important generation of African Americans, the best generation of black people and African Americans. What is that generation? As a person, if you're pro-black or you stand with black people, this is something that you should know this just as much as you know who Malcolm X is and Martin Luther King Jr. is. You should know this. What is the greatest generation of black people and African Americans? What's the best generation, the greatest generation? The greatest generation is the silent generation. Because that's the generation that produced Farrakhan, Minister Farrakhan, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. So now you know, if somebody asks you, well, we don't see nothing going on, what's the best generation of African Americans? We never seen you really do anything. I mean, let's just say somebody from a different country. We don't really, all we see is, you know, gang banging and killing and all this. What is the, they could get scramble brain. I'm kind of scramble brain. Who's the greatest generation? I haven't been here. Who's the greatest generation and best generation of black people? You should be able to tell them. If you're educated, if you're serious, if you're not playing games, you should listen. If you're not just sniffing around, playing around pro-black information and just passionate about black stuff here and there when somebody get beat down in the streets by the police, if you are consistently progressive towards progressing black information and black people, you should be able to have this foundation in your information. Who is the greatest black community of generation by generation? Who is the best generation of black people? Who is it? If I asked you, you wouldn't be able to tell me. And now you have to admit that I am a sensei. You understand? You're playing with a sensei. See, and I'm going to do a video about this. My generation is one of the first generations that decided to not lay down for white people, racist white people. You have to kill me. See, and I don't think white people understand that, or any other people that's trying me. We are the first generation of black people that refuse to die at the hands of white people. Before that, our ancestors would lay down and die. Our ancestors would just humble themselves. I represent the first generation that refused to die at the hands of America and at the hands of black people, and that's how you know it's trouble. I'm gonna tell you why you didn't know that was in you. Cause they didn't challenge you. They challenged me. See, they didn't challenge my generation yet. I'm the first one that they challenged of my generation. See, they ain't had a fight. America hasn't had a fight with black people until me. I'm the first one of my generation. Oh, well, show me somebody else. Show me somebody else where they've been having the police and the military following them around and National Guard following them around. Oh, yeah, that's what they've been doing. You think I'm stupid? Freemasons following them around. Huh? I represent the first person of my generation that has fought back against white America in America. And what they do not realize is my generation, not my baby book, not the forefathers, not our ancestors. My generation, Generation X, is the first generation that refused to lay down and die. We the first one. No, hold on. I want you to think about. I want you to ponder that. I want you to ponder that. Now, I want you to really, really, really ponder that, cause everybody gonna say that was everybody. Everybody was no. In other words, I guess you could say we'll be a little more proactive about not dying at the hands of America or white America. How about that? We're a little more physical, if need to be, if it comes down to it. When it comes to these white Americans playing in our face, when it comes to these Americans playing in our face. And they got help. Oh yeah, they got help. They got help from other black people. See, that's where it gets tricky. The Americans always had black people on their side. In the Civil War, they had black people on the Confederate side. They always had black people on their side, and they always had other people helping them. They got the Hispanic and Latinos on their side. This is why you have to be very careful when dealing with black and when dealing with Hispanic and Latino, because they can work for the Americans. They've always been working for the Americans. Not every one of them, not all of them, but some of them. And if you're not aware, you'll invite people that is working for racist white America. I call them hounds for America, like hound dogs. They hound out other black people. Black people that hound out other black people. They can have dreads, they can have gold teeth, they can have all the paraphernalia, and they are hounds for America. And they might not even think they're racist. It don't matter if you're racist. You're still a hound for America, right? You're still being used against the righteous Africans. See, I represent the righteous Africans. So how more fitting that the righteous African breaks down liabilities of generations and breaks down dynasties in who's the greatest generation of African Americans. How more fitting than the righteous? See, God knows what he's doing. Why you ain't got none of these other people that's breaking down these generations and breaking down, and they can't even tell you who the greatest generation. You should be able to tell me that in 5 seconds, 7 seconds, you should be able to tell me who the greatest generation of African Americans. I challenge you to go and look at all these pro-black people, all these people saying they for black people. They cannot tell you in 7 seconds who's the greatest generation. They're going to think, oh, well, the Malcolm X, they might say the Malcolm X generation, but they ain't going to be able to say it intelligently like I did. The silent generation is the greatest generation of African Americans, black people, because off the strength of Minister Farrakhan, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. Okay? Keep in mind, I'm older than Malcolm X. I am older than Malcolm X was when he was assassinated. He was 39. I'm 45 years old, right? MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. was 39 as well. I'm 45 years old. So just in case you think I'm talking a little big for my britches, I'm older than Malcolm X. I'm older than Martin Luther King Jr. I'm talking exactly how I'm supposed to be talking today. You got to say that. Because in our generation, you don't see many people like me. You don't see many young people like me. So my generation get treated like boys and girls because of our own problems. See, our problems was we got caught up in weed and gang banging and drugs and everything like that, right? So we don't got a lot of respect to the Generation X generation and the millennials generation and the young and younger than that. We don't. Most respect, and I'm glad I'm saying this, most respect is given to starting with the baby boomers and on up back to the silent generation and the greatest generation and the lost generation of the African Americans. So let's go through the generations, just in case you're just watching this video and you don't really know about the other video I made talking about the generations. So in America, there are 9 important generations. They're not 1,000 generations. You don't have 1,000 generations. And maybe you didn't know that. Let's just be honest, you didn't know, right? There's not 50 generations of African Americans. There's not 80 generations. There's not 75 generations. There's not 20. There's not even 20 generations of African Americans. Now you see what I'm saying? Now you're down to earth, literally, where you know reality, what it is in reality, right? Okay, so in reality, there's only 9 generations of African Americans and Americans at large, in general, that you should be concerned about, that you should study. Now, you could go back further, but I stopped at 1883, right? 1883 is a good place to stop for us, right? I mean, you could study, things that happened before that time. But let's be foundationally let's prepare the best foundation. The best foundation for understanding, especially where we went wrong. I think we could start at 1883, right? To understand why we became the way we became, why we formed ourselves the way we did, we could start at 1883, right? Yeah. Because before that, you're not going to get too much of a form out of black people or, starting at be earlier than 1883. Okay, so it's 9 generations that you got to be aware of. It's 9 generations. 9 generations of African Americans that you must be concerned about. 9 generations of Americans that you must be concerned about. So I'm just going to be going through the dates. I'm going to skim right through them and go right through the dates. And I'm not going to do, if you need to rewind it so that you can see all the dates and the names of these generations, because I'm not going to explain and break down every generation with history and everything like I did on the other video. If you need to go back and look at the generation video, it's on the same page. And if it's not, if you're on the older page that I have another page, Prophet Marshall Occurrence. You can put it in a YouTube search and you can add that page, and I have the generational or generation message on the younger page. Okay. So here's the name of generations. We can't make up names of generations. There were names made, right? This is the one-on-one in understanding generations. Names were made for generations. Specific terms were put as names of generations. They named the generations, all of us, not just black people. They named generations in America. Now you go to other countries, they named their generations as well. But each country names their generation based on unique things that happen. In some case, like for a perfect example, the baby boomers. The baby boomers was named the baby boomers because after World War II, the GIs or the military personnel was coming home and making love to their wives and husbands, and they were having a whole bunch of children, and so that's why they're called the baby boomers, because there was a boom in having babies. There was a boom in impregnating American women because military men were coming after World War II. They were coming back home and they were grateful to be back home. I think that played a big role in it, and they were, as a result, starting families. They felt probably It was no better time to start a family, being grateful that they survived, right? So that's why it's called the baby boomers. So you can't find the baby boomers in Russia. You can't find the baby boomers in Africa. You can't find the baby boomers generation. It wouldn't make sense. So you got to understand that that generations are named generations based on the geographics of a country. Okay? So that's why you got to understand it. It explains, in some cases, it explains the history of that generation, right? You get it, right? Okay. So you can't apply baby boomer generation to the whole world. It applies here for American generations. So these are the American generations. Okay? So the first generation I'm going to be talking about is the lost generation. I'm going to give you the dates. So you can go back and look at the dates and see when you was born, what generation you was born in, and your family and everything like that. And you can look up history according to the dates when people were born, right? You can put everybody in history according to how old they were at certain times. And when you see that certain people was in their primes at certain times, you know they had to be responsible. Because when you look at generations, you're going to look at who was in their prime, who was the oldest at that certain time. And that's who you give the liability to. And that's who you give the respect to for doing great things, like the silent generation, which was Malcolm X, MLK. You know, they were born at a certain time, and their generation is the greatest generation. Now you know. Okay, so the lost generation is the first generation I'm going to be talking about. Lost, as in losing something, lost and found. The lost generation, and I'm going to give you the dates. It's this generation starts from 1883 to the year 1900. That's the lost generation. The lost generation starts from 1883 to the year 1900. The lost generation starts from 1883 to the year 1900. So everybody born between the year 1883 to the year 1900 is called the lost generation. And you can probably go back and see why they called the lost generation. There's always some reason. There's always some history. And when you get to older generations of Americans, there's, you know, now these younger generations, as you're going to see, I don't know if it's based off of history as it once was, how they named the generations, but the further you go back, you will see that it was based on certain history why they were named a certain term for their generation. So the lost generation, you go back and look why you can AI and see why they're called, in AI mode on Google search, you can see why they're called the lost generation. It will give you the reason why was the lost generation called the lost generation. It'll give you the reasons. Okay, so the lost generation starts from 1883 to the year 1900 on the dot, 1900, the year 1900. So the lost generation is people that were born from 1883 to the year 1900. Next, the greatest generation. This is called the greatest generation. And like I said, you can go look up why they were called the greatest generation for further education. The greatest generation, its date started at 1901 to the year 1927. The greatest generation. The greatest generation is next after the lost generation. The greatest generation, the dates of the greatest generation is 1901 to 1927. Next, the silent generation, which is the greatest generation of black people and African Americans. The silent, as in silence, as in quiet. The silent generation starts at 1928 and ends at 1945. So everybody born between the year 1928 and ending at the year 1945 was the silent generation. The silent generation is the greatest generation of black people, period. There's nobody greater. There's no generation greater, especially now. I mean, the results are in. Like we said, we at the end of the world, right? So the masters want proper closure. You know what I'm saying? Like me, I'm going to bring proper closure as the elite, as the master, as one of the masters, one of the senseis in the world. I'm a world-class sensei, right? The silent generation is the greatest generation of African Americans, which that is everybody born between 1928 and 1945. So everybody born between 1928 and 1945 is the silent generation. Everybody born between 1928 through to 1945 is the silent generation. Next, the baby boomers. The baby boomers were born between the years of 1946 and 1964. So everybody born between 1946 to 1964 is the baby boomers generation. And like I said, the reason why they're called the baby boomers because after World War II, all the military personnel was coming home and starting families. And as a result, they call it basically the baby boom. So they were called, as a result, the baby boomers. Okay, so the baby boomers were born between the years 1946 and 1964. It's just flipped around, 1946 to 1964. But there's two parts. What makes this generation unique is that there's two parts to this generation. You got baby boomers 1, the first part. You got baby boomers 2, the second part, right? The first part, this is the dates of the first part of the baby boomers generation. I don't know if every generation is two parts. I don't think so, though. But the baby boomers uniquely is 2 parts. So the first part of the baby boomers generation starts from 1946 to 1954. That's the first part. Baby boomers part 2 of their generation, the second part of their generation. This is public information. I'm not making this up. I'm not breaking it down into 2 parts. This is how the Americans chose to break this generation down, and I'm pretty sure that's by some type of significant history, or it has to be. It's for some specific reason, informational reason. I don't know what the reason really is, but you can always Google it and find out why it's broke. That's why I like Google. You can always, every thought that crosses your mind, you can always educate yourself. And I also I'm gonna do a video about this. Whatever thoughts cross your mind, just use your phone and Google everything that comes to your mind, and constantly, consistently, every day, educate yourself as thoughts come to your mind. See, younger generations, older generations, we couldn't do this. I'm 45. I'm just now to the point where every thought come across my mind, I can go Google it and get the information. So you can go see why baby boomers generation is broken down to 2 generations. 1946 to 1954. Baby boomer part 2, the second part is from 1955 to 1964. So baby boomer part 1 is 1946 to 1954. The second part of baby boomer generation starts at 1955. So if you was born in 1955, you are part of the second part of the baby boomer generation, starting at 1955, ending at 1964. So that's the baby boomers generation. Now, next is the Generation X. That's my generation. Generation X. The dates start at 1965 to 1984. If you were born through the dates of 1965 to 1984, you are Generation X. I'm born into Generation X. So Generation X starts at 1965. If you was born in 1965 through 1984, you are Generation X. We were considered the rebellious generation, the outcast generation, the black sheep generation. I remember there was like magazine articles saying Generation X, the outcast, the dark generation, the bad generation, who are they, what will they do, da da da, right? Generation X we were like the outcast generation. And like I said, we was the first generation that decided not to lay down for these white Americans and these Americans at large. We are the first. They just didn't know because they never faced us on the battlefield. This is the first time that they faced us on the battlefield. Ain't no way in the world you're gonna tell me everybody born younger than Generation X and younger is gonna lay down for these white people. Ain't no way in the world, and I'm not a racist. I'm Pacific. Like I like to say, I'm not racist. I'm Pacific. If it's you, it's you. Me pointing out a specific race doesn't mean I'm racist. If it's you with the liabilities, then it's you. How's it racist? Because you're racially sensitive. See, we have to address people that are racially sensitive. Well, you can't even talk about putting liabilities where they belong to each ethnicity as it belongs to each ethnicity. If it's black people, it's black people. If it's white people, it's white people. If it's Hispanic and Latinos, that's who it is. I'm going to go with who it is, right? That's not racist. That's specific. So we're not going to lay down for no white folks. And we're not going to lay down for no Americans. This generation, Generation X, they never faced us. They faced baby boomers and older. They faced baby boomers and older. They didn't face my generation. What I'm trying to get you to see, and I'm going to do a whole video about this, they never faced Generation X on the battlefield. America never did. When they faced us. We was too busy getting thrown in jail. We was too busy getting killed. And we a matter of fact, we never turned around our perspective to fight the Americans like our forefathers. We never felt the need. There's always something to fight for. There's something to fight for right now. But we never fought against the Americans. You see what I'm saying? We never fought against the Americans like our forefathers, like the baby boomers and older. We never fought against against America. So we never faced them on the battlefield as a collective community. So this is what you need to understand. This is very important. Generation X never faced collectively. We never collectively faced America. Not Generation X. Baby boomers did. Baby boomers did because they were the children of the silent generation. They were the children literally of Malcolm X and MLK. They were the children that Malcolm X and MLK was talking to. So the baby boomers fought America, but we never did. So by the time you got to Generation X, we never fought America. We stopped fighting America. By the time you got to Generation X, the fight stopped. Let's ponder that. Let's ponder that. Let's ponder that for a minute. Hallelujah. Ain't this good information? By the time we got to Generation X, we stopped fighting. No, you've heard we stopped fighting before. No, you've heard that before. I'm gonna show you when we stopped. See, this is why it's important. See, you see what I'm saying? This is why it's important to break everything down to generations. Because now here you see where we stopped fighting as black people. When did we stop fighting from generations? I can show you exactly when we stopped fighting. My generation, Generation X, we stopped fighting. We stopped fighting. My generation started to follow the perspective, and this goes full circle revolution to my message, the two dynasties. of African Americans. My generation collectively followed the baby boomers generation collectively. There's two dynasties. The baby boomers dynasty and the silent generation dynasty. You got two dynasties. This is stuff that you should listen. This is stuff you should be able to tell people. What's the two dynasties, the most important dynasties of African Americans? See, you don't even know. See, as a sensei, respect the sensei. Stop playing with me like I'm a BG, like I'm a baby gangster, right? I am a sensei, right? Listen, you wasn't able to tell us. No, this is for the people that, they supposed to be the teachers and leaders. Okay, why you couldn't break it down to dynasties? What's the dynasties? After all is said and done, after all the money done came in, after we done worked, that creates dynasties based on success, right? I mean, safe to say, when there's a certain amount of success, the term dynasty gets placed on that group of people, that generation that created that success. It becomes a dynasty. No, let's ponder that. You think I'm playing, don't you? You think I'm on here playing, don't you? Now you see I'm not. Listen. When there's a certain amount of success on any generation or any group of people, whether it's outside a generation or it's not even the same bloodline, it could be a group of people, basically. When a certain amount of success happens, the term dynasty gets placed on that particular group of people or ethnicity of people or generation of people. In this case, it is by generation. You got two generations, two dynasties based on success in the African American community. You got the baby boomers dynasty, and you have the silent generation dynasty. And that's the purpose of this video, is to explain the two dynasties. This is the punchline. The two dynasties of African Americans is the silent generation dynasty and the baby boomers generation dynasty. Okay, now you know. And you can't make anything else happen as far as information. See, some people get so unique out there that you start creating other information around history and foundational truths. I'm not doing that. I'm not bucking the history. Don't buck the history. Because then you understand why things is the way it is. All I'm telling you, if you're putting out information, stop being so unique. You're making unicorns, and stop making unicorns. Stop making informational unicorns. Stop making information, knowledge, turning knowledge into unicorns. Listen, the two dynasties, I'm talking about reality here. The two dynasties of African Americans is only two. The silent generation dynasty and the baby boomers generation dynasty. And this is the setup for my next message. My next message is going to be about the tragedy. The tragedies of the silent generation dynasty and the baby boomers generation dynasty. See, this is how it should be broken down, don't you think? Yeah. Now we talking about the tragedies within our dynasties, but that have to be broken down to generations. It can't just be, oh, well, we're just going to talk about tragedy in the black community. It's going to be vague information. The information is going to be vague. It's going to be vague. If I just say, well, right here and right there, you see, that's the reason why you break things down to generations. So then I can say, well, it was this generation that did this generation that did that. I can't blame the silent generation for the gangbanging. They wasn't part of it. The silent generation which is the greatest generation of African Americans. They was not responsible for the gang banging. They wasn't responsible for starting Crips and Bloods. They wasn't responsible for the bulk part of the gang banging on the streets and the selling drugs. They wasn't part of. They wasn't. Most of them wasn't rappers. Listen. The rappers influenced the community. Listen, what would America be without rap music? Influencing the people. We would have been a whole different people. You don't want to admit that, do you? That's 7 hours. Listen, you don't want to admit it, do you? If we did not have rap music, our community would be totally different. See, that's what the baby boomers, the silent generation dynasty. I'm part of the silent generation dynasty, right? By worldviews and perspective, not by age. See, you don't have to be a certain age to be a part of these two dynasties. In fact, every black person falls into one or the other of these categories, of these dynasties. The silent generation dynasty or the baby boomer generation dynasty. And it's based on the mentality. It's based on the mentality. This is the perspective of the silent generation dynasty, where people like Malcolm X wouldn't have found hip hop very amusing. At some point, he wouldn't have found it amusing. Martin Luther King Jr. wouldn't have found rap music, and listen, I can rap myself, but I can tell you Martin Luther King Jr. wouldn't have found rap music very amusing at some point. I would say around the late 90s, they would have started complaining. See, you forget that Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X could still be alive. They young enough to still be alive. No, let's ponder that. Oh, go check the dates. You got Betty White. She was almost 100 years old. Betty White, the actress. She was 100. Listen, she was almost 100. She was months away, weeks away from 100, right? Why couldn't Malcolm X, glory to Yahweh, why couldn't Malcolm X, look at this butterfly. Why couldn't Malcolm X and MLK still be alive? They would be in their 90s, but they would still be here. And let me tell you something. Most of y'all didn't think that. It seemed like it happened so long ago. We talked about it so many times. You think that they wouldn't be alive. If they was not assassinated, they would still be alive. They could still be here. And you want to talk about, well, maybe their health, they wouldn't be. Come on, you splitting hairs. I'm talking about by years, they could still be here, possibly, right? In their 90s, they still could be here. And they would not be amused at rap music. I'm sorry to tell you. See, a lot of y'all just put Malcolm X and MLK like they would be cool with what you're doing because you're trying to make lemonade out of lemons, right? And you feel like because of the hustle of that, Malcolm X he would approve. No, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't, because see, you can't even compare Farrakhan and Malcolm X mentality. Listen, I'm being real. You can't say, well, Farrakhan and Malcolm X is tomato. No, you can't. Malcolm X was his own man. He probably, most likely, he wouldn't agree with none of this stuff. MLK was his own man. He wouldn't agree with none of this stuff. See, we lost leaders like that, so we don't know how they will respond to that. Man, you ain't got nobody that would listen. You ain't got nobody with that intellectual caliber here now, right now. I'm the closest thing to it. If Malcolm X and MLK would not agree with no rap music and all of this stuff, no, they wouldn't. Because what they gonna do, especially Malcolm X is just gonna dissect it down to mentality. The mentality is what he gonna disagree with. And he ain't gonna care nothing about the music, the boom bap, the bass, the kick, the snare, the hi-hat. He ain't gonna care nothing about that. He gonna talk about the mentality behind it, and he gonna leave it right there. He gonna leave that bus parked right there. You see what I'm saying? So we would be a whole different community without it. You wouldn't have people motivated to be thugs and gangsters without if that music wasn't here. See, this is back to placing liabilities where they belong. So you got the silent generation dynasty, you got the baby boomers generation dynasty. I follow behind the silent generation dynasty. You got the baby boomer generation dynasty, which that's where hip hop went. That's where hip hop went. That's where all this stuff went. And people took that mentality, whether it's fully or halfway. Most of us, this is why you got to check yourself. Do I follow the silent generation dynasty and mentality, or do I follow the baby boomers generation dynasty and their mentality? Right? Because you only gonna fall if I look at your worldviews. If I study your worldviews, I'm gonna look at your worldviews. I'm gonna look at your perspective. I'm gonna look at your mentality, and you're gonna either fall into people that preserve black people and fight for black people and preserve black movements and black rights and black laws, or you fall into the category of the baby boomers generation, which you may be either nonchalant about all of that. You're not active. Let's just say the most innocent of the baby boomers generation dynasty. Maybe you don't destroy black people. Maybe you don't fight against black people in no form or fashion, but you are inactive. You don't care. You're nonchalant. You sit back and watch stuff, and you don't say anything, right? Then you got those on the spectrum of the baby boomers generation mentality that are active, are killing black people, are making messages that's indirect about killing black people. And so you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You know, unfortunately, in this case, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have your chocolate cake and eat it too. I couldn't resist that one. Listen, you either follow protecting black people and black views and black people laws and everything, or you destroy. You can't build and destroy. It's an oxymoron. You can't build and destroy. And there's many people that put out messages that's indirect about the streets and thugging and gangbanging and killing, and your message is basically destruction. See, what we got to do is look at, like a scientist or a surgeon, what part of your message is destructive or can lead others to destruction? And we ain't trying to hear nothing else. What part of your mentality is destructive towards black people? And when we find it out to be that way, we put you in the category of baby boomers dynasty mentality. The silent generation dynasty mentality is where you get the mentality and the worldviews of Malcolm X and MLK, right? You preserve black people. You preserve black thought. You preserve black movements. And it don't matter if it's cool or not. See what led many people to joining the mentality of the baby boomers dynasty generation mentality is that it appeals to people. It's part of the culture because of baby boomers dynasty generation mentality being part of the culture. It's almost hard to sidestep this mentality, to not be part of their mentality, to not be part of their dynasty. See, to be a righteous African, which many people don't even know what a righteous African. I didn't say a church-going African. I didn't say a Presbyterian. And listen, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not saying a religious African. I said a righteous African. I am a righteous African, right? I have no choice as a righteous, and listen, when you are a righteous African, you have no choice but to follow the silent generation dynasty mentality, which is to preserve black thought, black perspective, black movements, and black laws to protect black people. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have your chocolate cake and eat it too. The only way you're going to eat the chocolate cake is if you go with the silent generation dynasty mentality, the mentality of Malcolm X and MLK. You see what happened? What I think happened is white people in America made sure there would be nobody else like Malcolm X. What did they do? They swamped the culture. They did all this stuff. They made sure it wouldn't be nobody. You could say Satan and his kingdom made sure that there would not be no more Malcolm X's, nor more MLKs. And it isn't. You know why? You know why? I'm going to tell you why. Even if you don't want to know why, I'm going to tell you why. Because of all the gang banging, all the drug selling, all the stuff, I believe that many Malcolm X's and MLKs were killed from the culture and from the gang banging and thugging and all of that. If you know about Malcolm X, he barely made it out the streets. They used to call him Detroit Red. Malcolm X, his alias was Detroit Red. He found Islam in prison. He was in prison. What that tells you? He barely made it. Listen, the onslaught of the satanic kingdom, to be safe, the satanic kingdom was already on black people's head, where Malcolm X barely made it. See, I'm gonna do a whole video about that. Listen, so you can understand how things were changing already by the time you had Malcolm X and MLK. Malcolm X barely made it. He was already in prison. Mug shots and everything. So then so the smart person realized if Malcolm X barely made it, then the next generations didn't make it. That was just like him. Had the intellect just like him, everything. They wind up going all the way in the wrong direction. Malcolm X didn't go all the way in the wrong direction. He found Islam in prison. I don't follow Islam, but he found his mentality. Let's be safe. Let's put it like that. He found his mentality to preserve black laws, black people, black movements. Before that, he found it in prison. But before that, he was Detroit Red. So if his generation was already going through turbulence of the streets, what you think happened after that? When he barely made it, what you think happened to the next generations as this stuff got worse, as things progressively got worse? The next generations didn't even make it. And so that's why you don't see any Malcolm X's. That's why you don't see any MLKs. I believe that white America and racist white America, specifically racist white America, to be safe, racist white America didn't want no chance of another Malcolm X, no chance of another MLK. So they swamped the culture, they swamped the community with all type of pitfalls, moral pitfalls, sinful pitfalls, spiritual pitfalls. Drugs, alcohol, everything in between. They talking about they don't know how they got in here. This is supposed to be the strongest community, the country in the world. How drugs just get in here then? Because it was in the racist mentality, it was a necessary evil. It was a necessary evil to destroy me and you. Drugs being allowed into America was a necessary evil to destroy me and you. It was a necessary evil to them. And if you look up the definition and term necessary evil. Drugs was a necessary evil brought in to destroy me and you, to make sure there was never a Malcolm X or MLK or nobody like that. And it never was. You know why? Because they went to the baby boomers dynasty mentality of gang banging, drug selling, everything like that. There was no chance. It wasn't even a chance of a Malcolm X coming. That's why there is not one. There isn't one. Yeah, that's why it's not. Okay, so let's review. There's 2 dynasties of the African American community. Not 5, not 12, not 1,000. And we base those dynasties off of success. Okay, so who was most successful? What generations was most successful when we look at record companies, movies, music, culture, money? The most successful black people that got billions of dollars, what generation they come from? I guarantee you it's going to be the baby boomers generation or the silent generation. You will find people in Generation X, my age, that got millions of dollars, but most likely, collectively, you're going to find that the most black people that got the most money is the baby boomers generation. That's the sweet spot as far as us getting money. The baby boomers generation, and that's why they influence everybody. You see what I mean? You see all these people with money, you're gonna follow that mentality. See, that's it right there. That's a 7 out. You're gonna follow their mentality. You see all these baby boomers got money, got billions of dollars, literally billions. I mean, Jay-Z's he either is early Generation X or baby boomers. But if you look at everybody around Jay-Z and Kanye West and people like that, those ages, that age bracket, that's going to be either early Generation X from 1965 to 1984, or it's going to be baby boomers 1946 to 1964. Anybody born as young as 1964 at latest and back to 1946 is going to be baby boomers. They the ones with the most money. I mean, let's talk about besides celebrities and besides famous people. All these people making money. Safe to say, as far as black people, they baby boomers. They the ones that got the mentality to make the most money. Even now. So that's why it's a struggle to have black people side with the silent generation dynasty, because they're going to look at the baby boomers dynasty. This is important. They're going to look at them and all the money they got, and they're going to say, well, I want to help people, but I want to get bread. I want to get money. And part of the mentality that we all have is, we're not really for each other that much anymore. I mean, I don't feel the need to dedicate myself totally and be a martyr for this cause, and nobody follows the mentality of preserving black people and black lives and black perspective. Some people say it's played out. Some people say it's a lost cause. And some people don't care at all. That's black people now. They don't care at all. So it's hard to just throw somebody in the water, throw somebody in the pool and say, yeah, preserve black lives, preserve black perspective, and dedicate yourself to that. That's how far gone it is. It's almost like being a man in the desert. Where's the oasis? Where's the oasis in the situation? When you're trying to preserve black thoughts, you're not going to have a lot of support. You're not going to have a lot of people that take you seriously. You're not even going to have a supporting oasis where people support you and get behind you. You ain't even going to have a supporting oasis in many cases. And you got to stand on your own and still represent the silent generation dynasty mentality. But see, a righteous person, we going to do this. See, this is the difference. A righteous person, we going to do that anyway, because we follow God. If you follow God, you're going to follow the word of God. You're going to follow the mentality to preserve black people, black thought, and black perspective as a righteous African. That's why either way it go, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to tell the truth in the proper context anyway, right? So it's not hard for me to do, because I serve God first anyway. I serve God, right? So it's not hard for me to have a mentality to preserve black lives and black and black perspective and black movements. But see, like I said, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't talk about thugging and gangbanging or even insinuate it. See, this is what a sensei would tell you. This is what a sensei from the silent generation dynasty mentality would tell you. You can't even insinuate. Understand higher psychology. You can't even insinuate gang banging, thugging in the streets and getting high and doing drugs and drinking excessively and expect it not to affect the mentality of the people, or feel like your messages shouldn't affect the mentality of the people. You're still insinuating it. See, things are insinuated very well. You can listen to a song and see what's insinuated. That's some homework for rappers. What is your songs insinuating? I said insinuating. I didn't say, oh well, what you said. I ain't say what you said you did in the song. Listen to your music. If you want to know how to be safe and healthy as far as your messages as rappers and singers, what is your music insinuating is what you should ask yourself. When I listen to this, you're competent mentally, right? Okay. So, what is your music insinuating? See, you can't bamboozle God. You can't bamboozle God. Well, Lord, I try to, I'm trying to be positive here and there. Nah. What is your music insinuating? When we put your music on, what is it insinuating? What is your message insinuating? Promiscuous sex? No monogamy? Not monogamous relationships? Fighting people? Shooting people? Hustling, selling drugs? What is your music insinuating? And see, once you realize, listen, this is all about our generations, from young as Generation X and younger, is all about keeping it real. So why nobody don't keep it real right here? Why won't keep it 100 right here? You can't insinuate killing, promiscuous sex, and selling drugs and then say, well, I'm trying to be positive. I'm still trying to throw it in there. See, the wisest sensei know that even if I change my ways, people still insinuate my whole catalog and even what I'm doing presently with thugging and gangbanging and getting high and drugs. So like a real rapper almost has to completely clear the air and say, yo, I don't rap about thugging and gangbanging no more and selling drugs anymore. I don't condone. Main thing that the statement that the thug and gangster has to release is I don't thug no more. I don't gangbang. I don't sell drugs no more. I don't hustle. I don't believe. Furthermore, I don't agree with hustling. I don't agree with drug selling. I don't agree with gangbanging. See, perfect example is like, no disrespect, but like Bone Thugs and Harmony. They one of the perfect examples. They went from like dark music, Ouija boards, talking about that, and I'm not saying I know how far that went. It didn't go as far as it was insinuated, but see, back to insinuation. Bone put out Ouija board songs, and the insinuation was I'm into witchcraft. Oh, what other insinuation it was? And that influenced. Listen very closely. That influenced many people to go on and use witchcraft based on listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony. They insinuated. That's why you got to go back to your category and be real with yourself. Keep it real with yourself. What did I insinuate as a messenger? Not as a rapper, as a messenger. What did I insinuate? Bone came out with Ouija board songs and all of this stuff and talking to Mr. Ouija. That's divination at minimum. Some would say witchcraft. They went on talking about demons, dark stuff, and everything like that. Woo, 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 right? And then at some point when they came to the crossroads type of music, then they went, once they seen that was successful, I'm just thinking from a business perspective, they began to incorporate more heavenly messages and spiritual messages because they seen that the crossroads was successful. I'm not saying they wasn't real after that, but you can't tell me you ain't considered that crossroads was successful, and therefore we're gonna try to put out more messages that was like that because that was successful. And anybody would do that. I would do that, right? But the problem is that people know Bone Thugs besides all those positive messages. They gonna only know you for thugging and gangbanging. You gonna be a trigger for only those things, and specifically smoking weed and getting high. You gonna be a trigger for all of that. Ain't nobody thinking about, listen, man, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. Only less than a quarter of Bone Thug fans is thinking about these positive messages about God and these positive messages about praying. I mean, come on, is it really sinking in for your fan base? No, they thinking about getting high and thugging and gang and doing a little in the revolution of thugging and everything and rising up. Where really the righteous Africans, we in that position of rising up, against these Americans and everything, the right way, the spiritual way. We really are what Bone insinuated when you talk about these wars and Armageddon and when Mo Thug was talking about rising up and the mark of the beast, these police being, enforcing the mark of the beast and all of that kind of stuff. We as the righteous Africans are really the one that really facilitates that perspective about this struggle against good and evil, the mark of the beast community and the witchcraft community, these devils out here in the community. We the ones that really insinuate that. That's why I feel like they let us down, you know what I'm saying? Because they had the potential, but they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. You know what I'm saying? They didn't want to come all the way over and being righteous Africans and follow the mentality of the silent generation dynasty mentality. They wanted to still eat, and I understand, even though I don't agree. They wanted to eat off of their catalog and continue to, eat off the devil's plate. Let's call it how it is. Because if you ain't putting out a righteous message, God ain't receiving that, bro. That's all I'm saying. It's not the work of God. That's how you have to look at it. So I feel like it's in vain. There's some people that's in darkness and feel like, okay, if I'm in darkness, I'm not going to talk about God, because I'm not living it. And some people that listen to Bone will say, well, these rappers don't put out positive messages, but they not living it. Why would they? I had one Jamaican man tell me this: you either be righteous or wicked. You can't be both. You can't. You either gonna be a righteous person. This is what I'm paraphrasing what he told me. Basically, you're gonna be righteous or you're gonna be wicked. Bone didn't make up their mind, so they put out these messages of this and that and da, which is kind of the mentality of most people, but it will not really avail to produce fruit unto salvation. It won't get nobody saved. Now, in a tricky way, in a rare way, some people will listen to some of the messages and decide to go to God. Now, I know that. But as far as the masses, that's what the wise sensei is going to think about. I can't put out an indirect message of sin, carnality, and say that I'm soldiers for God. That's why we got to start regulating on everyone. Like Jay-Z putting out these songs talking about on the song Devil Is a Lie with Rick Ross. See, you got to start denying your catalog when you come to God. Okay, I deny that song. In 2026, moving into 2027, you got to start saying, okay, that song in my catalog, I don't want no more money off that, because I don't like the message. So just delete that, get rid of it. I'll discontinue that. Whoever you collaborated with, you talk to them, you tell them why, and you got to discontinue some of these messages. Right? Not just, oh yeah, I let that go. Oh, I'll go do something else in the right direction, but you still eating off certain songs. See, that's not the right way. The right way, that's including Bone Thugs. You gotta stop eating off of the messages that is satanic. You know it ain't of God. Then don't recite those songs. Don't conjure up that energy. Bones, if you are spiritual, Bones shouldn't be doing no more murder songs. More murder shouldn't be done no more. Man, come on, bro. You shouldn't be talking about Ouija or nothing. When you wasn't even really in witchcraft anyway. See, some people will call you out for that. Some real witches will call you out. Well, y'all was playing around Ouija boards, but y'all was fake. Y'all wasn't really no divination or Ouija board people or communicating with spirits and stuff like that. But that was insinuated. So you gotta understand with Jay-Z, the song "Devil in a Lie," he should. Devil is a lie. He should discontinue getting money off of that message. If you really real with God, you would discontinue that message, because in the song he says, turn the black Jesus into white. Put the black Jesus with the white Jesus, and all I had to do was turn the stove up. Meaning, the pot represents black Jesus. The pot for cooking crack cocaine, right? The cocaine represents the white Jesus. Black Jesus and the white Jesus. That's blasphemous, man. Comparing Jesus to cooking crack cocaine, bro? Really? And then here's the thing. You couldn't do this in Islam. If it was a prophet like Muhammad in Islam that was talked about in reference to crack cocaine, Jay-Z would have to always watch his back for crazy people. I'm just being honest. That's why they don't play around the Prophet Muhammad like they play around Jesus. You ain't gonna never see no rapper talking about the black Muhammad and white Muhammad and turn the stove up. Oh no, buddy, no, listen, you know better. You know better. Jay-Z know better. He ain't no way in the world he can make no roundabout messages from the streets talking about referencing the Prophet Muhammad as crack cocaine and cooking crack cocaine. But with Jesus, there ain't nobody gonna say nothing. You got timid, docile Christian men that are not gonna say nothing. But they can talk about they can talk about Jesus and all kind of references. But they will not talk about the Prophet Muhammad. They know better than that, buddy. Why you ain't think you ain't hearing no rappers referencing to it? Cause they know better than that. They been knew better. Now they ain't gonna say nothing. They ain't gonna say nothing. No, with no tricky lines. Nas talking about snuffing Jesus. He ain't gonna talk about snuffing the Prophet Muhammad. Oh man, no. Some people that don't understand your culture ain't gonna take it no other way, bro. They ain't gonna take it the way you putting it out. But then Nas can talk about snuffing Jesus. See, that song should be discontinued. I can go through your catalogs, and what I challenge you as rappers to do is go through your catalog and discontinue these songs that you made, where you disrespected God, where you disrespected Jesus, where you disrespected the Holy Ghost, where you disrespected God's word. Like Beyonce talking about taking and using paper, the Bible paper for her ministration. That's disgusting. But she thinks she's so sweet between her legs she could use Bible pages for ministration. Ain't no woman that sweet between her legs where she thinks she's so haughty she can use Bible pages for her ministration. You can't be serious. That's disgusting. But see how people easily flatter themselves. You see that part? She should discontinue that message. She should be ashamed and embarrassed that the prophet got to talk about you, talking about using Bible pages for ministration. That's what everybody's talking about. That's what everybody's talking about. In the Christian community, that's what everybody's talking about. Beyonce talking about using Bible pages for her funky administration. Listen, man, let me tell you something, man. They couldn't do it with the Quran. She couldn't talk about using no Quran pages for her funky ministration. She couldn't talk about it. She wouldn't know. Listen, she would have to watch herself out here. Listen, I'm just keeping it real with you. Oh, I'm lying. All these crazy Islamic Muslim terrorist type people. I'm tripping. She couldn't say nothing about listen, she couldn't say nothing about using no Quran pages for her administration. She wouldn't hear the last of it, man, from the Muslim Islamic community. And you know that. But over here on Christianity, you got all these docile people. These Ned Flanders type of people. That's why I make it so very clear, bro. I'm not Ned Flanders. I believe in carrying arms. I believe in arming yourself. Yes, I have become the full spiritual warrior. I believe in arming yourself. I believe in carrying arms. Yes, I do. I believe in protecting your family physically. That's right. With all these crazy people, like I like to put it, I trust in God, I pray, but I believe if any devil get through the cracks, I'm going to have something waiting for him. That's how I put it. Any devils get through the crack using their free will. See, man has free will to do what he want to do. Right? Okay, so then, when he chooses to do what he wants to do, I'm going to have something waiting. What's wrong with that? Is that crazy? Is that carnal to you? See, you got to check yourself, man. You got to check yourself. See, the truth is, really, in Christianity, you don't have a lot of masculine men, masculine leaders. And you go to Islam, you got plenty masculine men, brawny masculine men. That's why men go to Islam. Oh, you don't want to hear that? You don't want to hear that, do you? You don't want to hear that. Half of these people going to Islam, you going to Islam, you know why you're going to Islam? Because they masculine. They masculine men over there. You go to Christianity, you got Ned Flanders. It's okay to be a man. I hate to tell you. Listen, it's not a sin to be masculine. It's not a sin to be a masculine man. Christians need to hear it, man, because listen, we influenced by a lot of women. Hey, it's more women in the American church than anything else, and we know that. Man go join the church, he becoming feminine, docile a little bit. I believe in being a masculine man. I believe in the old school rules, mano a mano, protecting your family. You know what I mean? Saying stuff to people's face like a man. I have man codes. Ain't nothing wrong with being a man. Ain't nothing wrong with saying things as it needs to be said. Ain't nothing wrong with that. That's your nature as a man. That's what you're supposed to do. But as you get older, you learn the art of doing it the right way. As a young man, you're going to make mistakes. But as you get older, you're going to learn the art of saying what you need to say the right way. Doing what you need to do as a man the right way. But as a young man, you're going to be finding your way. You get a pass for making mistakes, doing things the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? But the older you get, you're going to understand masculinity. You're going to understand man codes. You're going to understand what men live by. And you're going to hold, most importantly, you're going to hold these so-called men out here in the community to these real men codes that we all go by. And it ain't all about working and money. It's other things. How you handle things. See, the only part of being a man that we know about, which is a quarter of being a man, working is only 25% of being a man. Working, a job is only 25% of being a man. You got 75% of other stuff while other people fail as men. Listen. This is what needs to be taught in the Christian church. See, we need to take time to teach men how all the logistics of being a man. Working ain't all it is to be. I can show you people that's working and they failed in their marriage. I can show you people that's working and they failed being a man. Listen, man, listen. You think I'm playing and I'm not. You think I'm playing on here and I'm not. Listen. Many of you, back to Dynasties. You're raised from the Babyboomers Dynasty mentality. Many of you retaught yourself. You had to. Where you're taught now as a righteous African. From the silent generation, thinking similar to the silent generation dynasty. You're righteous, so you're not going to go totally, and that's important to note. I'm not going to go totally with the silent generation dynasty mentality because I'm a righteous man. So I'm going to go further in righteousness than even the silent generation dynasty mentality did. So you got to understand, there's two mentalities. There's two dynasties. The silent generation dynasty and the baby boomers generation dynasty. You got two dynasties. That's all you got. You got two dynasties. You got two. You got two dynasties, right? And you got to check yourself and say, well, you know, in all actuality, I think I lean more towards the baby boomers mentality. I used to be part of the mentality of the baby boomers generation, the baby boomers dynasty mentality. I used to, and many of you are the same way. What other mentality you gonna go with when that's the culture? The culture is the baby boomers dynasty mentality. That's all it is. It got a little bit of seasoning from the silent generation dynasty mentality. A little bit of seasoning. That's it. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of, you know, garlic powder, onion powder. You know what I mean? A little bit of sauteed onions on it. A little bit of sauteed garlic. But the overall meat of how people think is from the baby boomers dynasty mentality. The baby boomers generation dynasty mentality. And you either going with one or the other. And most likely, most of you are either with the baby boomers dynasty mentality, or you're influenced by it, or you're struggling with it. There's a struggle. Even I go through the struggle of choosing the fruit of the baby boomers dynasty mentality and the mentality itself, right? Or in being over here with the silent generation dynasty mentality. It's a struggle. And that's I'm glad I said that before I finished this message. It is a struggle for a black man or woman to choose the silent generation dynasty mentality and stand over here 10 toes down, right? No folding, you know what I mean? Not folding at all. Not biting your tongue, not minking your words at all, right? It's hard to do it, but God will give you the strength. You got to choose. You got to choose which dynasty you're a part of. Because like I said before in my messages last night, you know, you got the righteous Africans and the wicked Africans, and they're at war with each other. That's what's going on right now, where a lot of people are using hoodoo, voodoo, and obeah. And they got help from other people to use Brujeria and Santeria against us. You got the Brujos and the Brujas helping the wicked Africans. Yes. I just left South Charlotte, where the Brujos and the Brujas was against me, using Brujeria. I know all about that. I know about the Brujos and the Brujas, the Hispanic and Latinos using witchcraft, the Brujos and the Brujas and Brujeria, right? They gonna go with the wicked Africans. They not gonna be with us, those who use in Brujeria. See, I'm a spiritual black belt. I'm not a novice. I'm not an amateur. I'm not just trying to, you know, get my feet wet a little bit and trying to talk about something I'm not educated on and I don't have an experience with. I know all about this witchcraft that's being used from different races of people. You got the black people use hoodoo. In Charlotte, they use hoodoo with an H. Low country witchcraft. Low country voodoo, excuse me. Low country voodoo is hoodoo with an H. That's what Charlotte black people use. And voodoo is with the Haitians, starting with the Haitians, but it's not limited to the Haitians. You know, you got other people who become one of the four masters of voodoo. In voodoo, you got, this is important when understanding the dynasties, because the baby boomers dynasty, hallelujah, the baby boomers dynasty is going to be using witchcraft. Oh, well, the silent generation, we ain't gonna be using those influenced with that in part of that dynasty. No matter what age you are, most likely you're not gonna be using witchcraft, especially against your own people. You ain't gonna be using witchcraft against black people. That's 7 out. If you part of the silent generation dynasty mentality, you ain't gonna be using no witchcraft against black people. For no reason. For no reason. You know why? Because you're gonna be letting God handle everything. You're gonna let God handle it. You're gonna use spirituality on God's side at maximum, right? Black people are using hoodoo, voodoo, and obia. Obia is Caribbean witchcraft, Jamaican witchcraft, witchcraft in Barbados, Bajan witchcraft. All throughout the Caribbean, you have obia. O-B-E-A-H. Obia. Back to voodoo, you got 4 masters of voodoo. Earth, fire, water, and air. A master of voodoo masters one of those elements and become a master of either fire, water, earth, or air. That's how I've been taught. So it's not limited to Haitians, but Haitians are the ones that started voodoo in the context that we know it, right? In the context that we know it. Let's put it like that. That's who I've been taught by, the Haitian messenger talking about the 4 masters of voodoo, and they communicate with. There's 3 entities that people who practice voodoo communicate with. There's 3 entities: Papa Leba, Block Donnie, and the Grand Zombie. Those are the 3 entities that voodoo practitioners communicate with. Papa Leba, L-E-G-B-A. The G is silent. Leba, Papa Leba. Papa like a father, Papa Leba. Blanc Donnie, and the Grand Zombie. Those are the 3 entities that voodoo practitioners communicate to. Hoodoo, with an H, they communicate with the ancestors, the African ancestors. That's why many people who practice hoodoo do not feel that white Americans, or particularly Europeans, cannot communicate with the ancestors. So they don't believe, in hoodoo, that white people can come in and practice hoodoo, because how they gonna talk to African ancestors when it started with African ancestors? See, I'm educated. I just educated myself. It's easy for you to do the same thing, for you to go into the different denominations of witchcraft, where you understand the Hispanic and Latinos are using Santeria, where they wear the beads around their neck. You see the Latinos wearing beads. They're practicing witchcraft. Some of them wear the beads openly. Some of them tuck them in, and you can see it's still hanging out. See, I lived in New York City, so I know. I walk past somebody and they got the beads. I already know they work. They work in witchcraft. They're a warlock. You got Brujeria with the Brujos and the Brujas. The Brujos are the men, the warlock witches. The Brujas are the witches. So you have the Brujos and the Brujas. And that's in Brujeria. Right? You have to understand, this is part of the Babyboomers dynasty. The Babyboomers dynasty. Listen, this is why it's coming up. The Babyboomers dynasty is heavily connected with witchcraft. Hoodoo, voodoo, Santeria, the Brujos, the Brujas, the Brujeria. Obia. Wicca. Other pagan European forms of witchcraft. Listen, I challenge you to go look up all the different forms of witchcraft, because it's the reason why I'm saying this. Because it's connected to the baby boomers generation, their dynasty. It's part of their dynasty. And the righteous Africans go with the silent generation dynasty. So between the righteous Africans and the wicked Africans, we're going to go with either one or the other. The righteous Africans is going to go with the silent generation dynasty, while those who practice witchcraft are going to go usually with the baby boomers generation. They ain't going to be over here fighting for black rights and doing all this stuff and fighting with us, because their mentality is a little devious, right? That's going to cause them to deviate ultimately, most likely, to the baby boomers generation dynasty, where it's okay to do this to a black person even though you black. It's okay to put witchcraft. It's okay to fight these black people. See, I'm on the defense. You got to remember, being on the defense is never wrong. That's good for military. Understand that. If you got a military mindset, remember, being on the defense is never wrong. That ain't never wrong. You fighting on the defense is never wrong. You defending yourself. How is that ever wrong? Okay? So we gotta understand. You got the Asian people, the Chinese. They got the woos, the W woos. See, listen. Many people who use hoodoo don't even know about that. Brujeria, they don't even know about that. People who use brujeria, they don't know about it. You got the woos, the Chinese wizards. See, I just went and educated myself. You got the Indian people from India use witchcraft. This is what I found in my studies. Every ethnicity known to man in the average situation uses some form of witchcraft. And when you're understanding of the spiritual war, you understand that Satan is going to come to every race of people. He going to establish witchcraft in every ethnicity. That's how you need to understand it. It ain't no ethnicity that don't use it. You can't esteem no race of people as angelic or holy, because you understand the satanic kingdom. The satanic kingdom is going to come and establish witchcraft in every ethnicity. So you have to check your geographics if you're being gang stalked. Okay, are you in a neighborhood with a whole bunch of black people? Then they're gonna be using hoodoo with an H, hoodoo, and voodoo and obeah. Because what most black people gonna do if it ain't working, if hoodoo ain't working, they're gonna decide to go with the Jamaicans, because they esteem them as the strongest Africans usually in America, right? So they're gonna go with the Jamaicans. I've been through it all, man. I've been through it all. They're gonna go with the Jamaicans. I went through it in New York. I know they was using Jamaicans against me. But I done sent money to Jamaica. You know, I'm not against Jamaica per se. I'm on the defense. Understand that. You understand that, right? That's never wrong, like I established. So as soon as people see you fighting back, listen, they gonna say something wrong with that. No, it ain't. See, that's why you gotta understand, as a military mentality, it's never wrong to defend yourself. If you see your people being fought against, but they fought against this person first, what can we say? We can't say nothing. You could be fake about it, but you know. So, black people will use hoodoo. They'll start off using hoodoo. This is important spiritual warfare information. Most black people from the evil, wicked African community. You got the righteous African community and the wicked African community. The wicked African community is going to start out usually in the average, let's just say like I'm in Charlotte, they're going to start out using hoodoo. If the hoodoo don't work, they're going to go to, I would say, obeah, which is the Jamaican witchcraft, the Caribbean witchcraft, from, you know, all those places down there in the Caribbean. That's obeah. And I'm guessing that just obeah kind of as a craft influences the Caribbean in general, right? So obeah is what they're going to use next, and then they're going to use voodoo. Or they might use a combination after hoodoo didn't work of voodoo and obeah. I done been through it all, and none of it worked, because what they don't realize is, you know, I'm in spiritual warfare against hoodoo, voodoo, and obeah. That's why it ain't working. That's why it ain't working, because I'm not ignorant of the different denominations of witchcraft, and I fought back, and I'm fighting back. I'm actively fighting back. I'm fasting against Papa Leba. I'm looking in your face. I'm fasting against Papa Leba. I'm fasting against Blanc Donnie. I'm fasting against the Grand Zombie. I do fastings against them. And I fast against all the 4 different types of practitioners in voodoo. practitioners of fire, water, air, and earth. I'm fasting against all of those. And I'm fasting against the connection in hoodoo that the hoodoo practitioners have with the ancestors. I'm fasting to break their connection with the ancestors. See, once I studied what they were doing, I know what to hit. I know where to put the pressure. With voodoo, I'm a fast against Papa Leba, Blanc Donnie, and the Grand Zombie. With hoodoo, I'm a fast against hoodoo practitioners having a connection with the ancestors. They ain't gonna have no connection with them. Oh, I'm not playing no games, man. That's a 7-hour. I'm fasting against brujeria, the brujos and the brujas. I'm fasting against both of them, the brujos and the brujas and brujeria. That's why it don't work. That's why it don't work. See, and it won't work for you, against you, if you begin to dig in and go into spiritual warfare with each denomination of witchcraft. It's just like fighting a military. When you fight a military, you got to break them down to Navy, Army, Marines, Navy SEALs. You can't just fight the Americans and say, well, I'm fighting the military. That's vague. You have to break them down by branches of the military. It's the same thing with the satanic kingdom, the satanic military kingdom. You have to break them down, in this case, to different branches of witchcraft. Okay? Where you got the brujos, the brujas, you got obia, you got santeria, you got voodoo and hoodoo and obia. And you got the woos in the Chinese and with Chinese witchcraft. You got Japanese witchcraft. And you got different pagan forms of European witchcraft besides Wicca. It's more. I've covered all the pagan forms of witchcraft. You got to do this. And so this is the introduction of the dynasties of the baby boomers, and the dynasty of the silent generation. You got two dynasties, the silent generation dynasty and the baby boomer generation dynasty. Those are two dynasties. And like I said, this is proper closure in the last days for why things happen. Masters have to have that. You have to have that proper closure when you a master. You can't just sit back and then just die without closure. Think about what I'm saying. You can't just die without closure. So I'm giving you proper closure as a master, as a sensei, and I'm getting my closure, obviously. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm articulating the closure. I'm articulating information that gives the right closure. Make sense? So, to God's true people, salute. Over and out.